gap of like working from home, like
Okay.
now versus I guess like a year ago?
Yeah. Well, at
When did
least
it
the
start?
people got forced to.
When did work from home start? It started in
Uh, well, definitely. Well, the pandemic kind of started in 2020 March, April.
so yeah, that sounds about right. Like in early 2020 is when I think people really started working from home.
Yeah.
Is that right? Something around that. I'm not going to be able to figure because
I
I
mean,
think it was.
we
I
were
think that's
working from home before that, but
yeah. I
that's
think
when
it's
like
like we were working from home. Like we were doing cloud stuff, but the everyone else was kind of slowly starting to transition around that time.
yeah.
I remember at first a lot of productions just shut down because they just didn't know what to do because it was in production it's a much more difficult task than it is in post production because we can kind of do our job remotely and it's really not a big deal. But if you're working with actors and stuff, it's obviously when you have to be in contact,
Yeah.
it's much trickier.
So it took them a while to understand that we can work from home remotely.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, because you know, who knows? Like, you know, unless you're in the industry, you wouldn't really know. Although
Right.
I will say that like I have this in my notes that like kind of working from home or at least working what was the word? It was like working in like a decentralized way has been
Mhm.
happening way before COVID was going on. Like I
Oh yeah.
remember like when cloud rendering was beginning to happen at like double negative ILM, Weta, I think a bunch of people were doing it. That's when I think that's when people started to realize that, well, you know, you don't really have to have an office in the middle of Manhattan or downtown LA or Santa Monica or whatever, or you know, or London or you know, any of the super expensive spots. You didn't really need to do that necessarily. Like you could have people work off site and it really didn't affect anything because as infrastructure improved and more fiber started getting laid down, you can stream, you know, really high res imagery
Yeah.
with interactivity now. And we now
Oh
know
yeah.
that
I think their major issue was more like they were more concerned about like who's gonna watch the screen, you know, who's gonna be behind the screen that can leak footage.
yeah, exactly. Well, I
So
say
like
who watches the Watchmen, you
right.
know? Who watches them?
Um yeah, because I remember I worked at a company and their machines were in Atlanta,
Mhm.
but so yeah, we were working remotely with machines in Atlanta and it was fine.
So
This
this is
company was in
before
New
COVID.
York
This is
before
before
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
way before COVID. So yeah.
I remember that actually, yeah, because that's the first time I think where kind of for us, I think when this thinking came about, where like, oh, like these people are working remotely, essentially, like their machine, they just have like an area where there's machines and that happens to be in Atlanta. And I think
Yeah.
that's when we realized that like, oh, well, you know, working through data centers and machines, that's a whole industry. That's what the cloud industry is. You know,
Yeah.
there's Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have been on that game for decades now. And I think that's when we kind of moved into that space. But it is true, like a lot of companies. I remember when COVID first started, and people started to try to figure out how to work remotely. A lot of studios struggled for
Yeah.
sure. I worked with some people who there was like it's almost like it wasn't even a technological problem because you could team viewer and all these things already existed. You could already stream desktops to a remote location. That was never a difficult thing to do. Teradici existed for a long time before any of this. And a big issue was that there was like all this anxiety about just knowing whether or not the person was working on the machine or not. Like I would get calls, like if my mouse stopped moving, I would get people calling me. And it's kind of just like, you know, like I went to the bathroom. or like I was picking a song on Spotify or something. Like just like it would be something very kind of just like very minor thing. But because they were in the office, in their office, and they were
Mhm.
watching, they couldn't stop themselves from just like watching all the monitors. And if a cursor stopped moving, they would freak out because they would also be concerned that like maybe my internet went down and I just wasn't able to tell them or something. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I think also one of the biggest concern was managing people. Because like people when you're managing people, it's very easy when you're like face to face and you talk to them, and you can ask certain things and you can see how it goes. Like it's very like human approach.
Mhm.
But when you have to like manage people over the internet, like logistically, kind of seems confusing. You know,
Yeah.
because like, oh, now we're doing on a chat and I don't know if the person is there or not. I mean, still today, like certain Germans freak out if
Some people
if I
of
take a little bit longer to reply. So
some people of undisclosed nationality or
yeah, we don't know who they are. We're not gonna say names, but
yeah, no, it's true. It's like there's and there's so few kind of reference points to that. It was a truly novel thing
yeah,
where it's like, what industry can you look at that really works that way? Well, none of them really. I mean, maybe kind of the tech sector kind of works that way. There's a lot of temp workers that are remote, that are international, but it's very specific. Software development is, it's just a very specific thing. It's not very different from VFX in the sense that you can kind of just leave people and let them figure out a problem and
yeah,
just talk to them in like 8 hours and see where they're at. It's not much different in that sense. Um, so yeah, those were a lot of the problems that kind of when COVID first started and people tried to move over to remote, they had to kind of tackle really just like the people management side of it. Because I think a lot of people didn't realize how much they really just were managing by hovering essentially. They did a lot of supervisors did a lot of management by just hanging out and looking around and not
yeah,
necessarily by kind of
and
looking at.
right, and you can always have like inputs if you see something that is funny, like you can always like tell them like, oh, I think this is easier if you just do it like this.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've
And
definitely. I
definitely
mean,
like there's people that are less. I mean, like I grew up basically with chats. Like I didn't really like to go out that much, so for me it was fine. Like transitioning to a chat system is like, yeah, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, for me, like staying at home because of COVID is like, yeah, that's my year all around. So
yeah,
not a, but for people like my sister, which she's more into like talking face to face, that was like way different. Like
mhm,
definitely she felt detached from their objective.
yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I have no problem admitting that I never liked commuting to an office. I totally love just being at home and sitting in my office and doing my stuff. Was never into any of that shit. So
Right.
COVID was just not that bad for me, for sure. It was kind of like, yeah, great. Like it's like I don't have to get on the train or commute anywhere. I don't have to go in the subway. Like that's a dream come true.
I
Right.
had the subway.
So there's, yeah,
Well,
introverts versus extroverts was definitely a thing. There's a lot of people who were extroverted and their job was their social life essentially.
mhm.
Like that was probably very difficult for a lot of people. But maybe in some ways also healthy, because maybe I definitely noticed that, at least for me, like when I stopped commuting to work in a weird way, it actually made me more social in a way because it now became a proactive thing. And I started like reaching out to like friends and people who I like forgot about,
Mhm.
and for like no good reason. It's just the fact that because I was going to this office every day, and I was just like in this commute every day, that was kind of what I was confined to, and everything else was inconvenient. But now that I'm working from home, it's kind of like, well, everything's kind of the equal level of convenience. If I want to go visit people in Connecticut versus people in Long Island, it's all kind of the same distance, the same amount of effort. There's less excuses, so like less excuses, so to speak, I guess, to visit or not visit these people. So in that way, it helped me, I think.
I don't know
It's not enough for everyone.
if I got more social, but probably not.
I think I got more social. There's also, I'm going to make a distinction between like going to the bar a lot and being more social.
Yeah,
It's just because you're going
right.
drinking with the same people every day, you know, that's not the same as being more social
Right, right, right.
necessarily, you know.
Like actually reaching out to people, like
Yeah. Yeah, like I
intentionally.
had friends from high school who were living in Connecticut, and I like they're really good friends. I completely forgot to keep in touch with them, and there was no good reason for it other than it was just not in mind, and it was not convenient for me to do that. So in that sense, you know, those are kind of what I think like one of some of the benefits of going remote, working from home. So
Right.
So what were really, so I guess those are some of the upsides and downsides looking back on it. I mean, there was definitely a lot of growing pains when it first started, but now I think after a few months, everyone kind of completely got behind it, at least in visual effects.
Yeah, it seems like remote is accepted. I read about studios that are going to like always give the option to artists if they want to do it or not.
I mean, more than that, some studios just went fully remote.
Yeah, I see my husband actually works half the week at home and 2 days in the office. And he said that it's actually more stressful in the office because everybody is, like in panic mode because it's an office in New York. But he does pretty much the same amount of work, but it gets more stressful over there because you have to like constantly see people running around and they come and like ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, and like they can live without it too, like
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of that is true, like something, and this is kind of an esoteric thought, but I think when you work remotely, it kind of forces you to waste everyone else's time less because it's not that easy to do, right?
yeah.
You can send somebody, a question about something that would take you 5 seconds to figure out. I remember I did this on a chat. Like I was asking how to like change a setting in Slack or something, and like
Right.
it's stuff like that. And you guys just made fun of me, but that's valid. It's valid to make fun of me for that kind of stuff because it's just like, it's 5 seconds for me to figure it out.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can you can ignore things on Slack. And I think that's kind of, like it's whether that's good or bad is like kind of debatable, but like I personally think that that's healthy for people when you can't just like you have to, when you address certain people like at work, it's useful when it's actually something important.
No, I totally. I mean, I understand like there's a lot more usually a culture of like giving like tasks to other people that might have the answer or can do it faster than you or something like that. But sometimes like you can do it just as fast than like giving the task to somebody else, like asking or something.
Yeah, it's like you over delegate in some ways.
Right, delegating. Like there's a little bit of a culture of over delegating stuff in an office, and and I think it's always good that like people know that you can do it yourself as well.
I did notice that there's I think those are some of the upsides. It's like a lot of the upsides, I feel like, because it is like whenever I talk about people about just like the production capacity, I feel like the production capacity has not changed much, or maybe even increased slightly. Like people are pretty much producing the same amount of stuff as they would usually. I think it's more that there's like the details have changed now, where like, you know, like the stuff that we just talked about, for example, like just kind of like, you know, how people communicate is different. I feel like, you know, when you're at an office, there's a lot of things that like you can't do, like just like lay down on a couch, you know. Or
Yeah,
like,
they look at you weird.
they
I
look at
did
you weird,
that.
but like that sounds so trivial, but like we all know that would, like, there's a lot of people that would really love to take 10-minute naps in the office.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, and they'll never admit it, you know, because it makes you seem like you're some kind of like slob or something. But it's true. People get really tired and they want to take
yeah,
breaks and they want to lay down on the couch, and that's really kind of just not in office culture. That's not super appropriate, and they don't do it.
right, especially in New York.
Yeah.
Because
And what's the benefit of that? Like, who does that help?
yeah,
When you're at home, you can lay down on the floor if you wanted to. It's just like, who's going to judge you?
yeah, take like 5 minutes, like laying down, and then like go back,
Yeah.
or do like the Google people that they have like power nap pods that you can that are like all shielded from sound and noises.
Maybe that's what's going to happen. It's like if the decision is made that like everyone has to go back into the office, it's going to be, people are going to demand like nap hours and things like that. You know what I
I
mean? Like
doubt
it's
it, but it will be awesome.
yeah, like it's like, okay, you want me to come into the office, but like there needs to be a net, like a pod where I can
Yeah.
nap. You know, there needs to be a like a mini fridge next to my desk.
I mean, you know, I come from Italy, so like I think I mean I always disliked the siesta that they do between like 12 and 4, you
In
know.
Italy?
Yeah, like you go home, you have lunch, and then like you kind of take a nap, at least most adults do, and then you go back to work at 3 or 4, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Which is also like something that is kind of disappearing thanks to, you know, globalization.
Western world.
Yeah. But I always disliked it because that like you have like those like two, like it doesn't take me that long to eat, and then I have like 2 hours of like every store is closed and I cannot do anything, cannot
Yeah.
even go to the bank.
Yeah.
um
The little that I've been in Italy, I did think that was kind of strange.
yeah,
But
but there, you know, there is an upside down to that because like you go back to work and you're pretty refreshed, you know, like you're ready to tackle a problem that maybe you are having trouble with a different set of mind. um I mean, I'm not saying that like everybody should do like 3 hour nap in the middle of the day, but you know, like the idea of like stopping and like relaxing for a moment and
resetting your
then going back
brain.
to it. Yeah, I
Yeah, for sure.
think it's very underrated.
I think the big people that are going to really in kind of the work from home environment, which is really like, I think work from home is kind of like a silly term, really. It's really just more like a decentralized way of working in
Yeah,
the end. Because really the point is that like you're just working wherever. You know, you could work in an office or not in an office. That's really kind of the structural difference that's occurring in terms of that, like, you know, if you had to work in a hybrid environment, well, what that means is that like now where your office is changes, how big your office is, how much infrastructure do you have? Do you actually have on-premise infrastructure versus like off-premise infrastructure?
yeah,
You know, like all of that stuff changes. I think the people who are really kind of going to suffer the most is the IT department, because they now have to tackle these problems of like, you know, you have conventional internet, right? Conventional internet is just like the cables next to your
mhm.
house in the ground or on the pole, and those cables can be in various states of
Right
decay.
now you're not dealing with like professional equipment anymore.
Yeah,
You're
you're
dealing
dealing
with
with whatever is out there.
whatever it's available.
Like I remember when this was like 6-7 months ago, I was having problems with my internet. The flux was off, which is a real technical thing. The and it's because the cables, like the actual coax cable
They're old.
that was outside, because at the time it was coaxial, was filled with water.
Oh, I will do it.
It was raining a lot, and the cables were perforated, like there's holes in them, and it was the cables filling up with water. They went, they looked, they checked the house, everything was fine at the house. They went outside to the pole and they were like, oh yeah, everything is filled to the brim with water. That will definitely mess up your internet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it was wild. They had to replace, and I rarely give credit to Comcast, but I'll do it now. They replaced the entire cable on the street.
This is after a whole week of bad mouthing Comcast.
Yeah, like
So
we could have another 10 episodes of me just saying things about Comcast that
and more than 100 about the Foundry.
that may or may not get me sued.
So I would say if I was Comcast, I would be very happy about that praise.
Yeah, it's hard earned. Well, no, I gotta give it to them. They showed up. They didn't put up a fight. They just replaced the entire cable on the whole street, which is not cheap or easy to do. They were out there like day and night. So here's what I'll say. I'll say like whoever the local Comcast service people are super solid. They're really good. Like I'll give them praise. They really did really well. I don't know about the headquarters for Comcast.
Yeah, the issues in Philadelphia.
But whoever is doing stuff local is doing well.
Wish I could say the same about my internet provider.
Yeah, but that's kind of, so you have this, that's problem number one. You have like conventional internet. You can't run dedicated fiber to everyone's house.
Right.
So that alone is just kind of like, that's like a whole job just to tackle those problems, like latency issues, flux, which is a voltage, differences in voltage fluctuations, because this is all electricity. Everything we're talking about is just electricity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You have all of that stuff going on. Then you have to you kind of come into the on-premise world where now, like, all right, you have to like have really powerful network cards, or maybe not. Maybe you have 0 clients, or maybe you're going to try to utilize a hardware you already have. Maybe you want to do a private cloud. Maybe Disney's going to make you do a private cloud.
Yeah.
Maybe Disney's going to make you buy a separate building where you can shove your servers in, and it all has to be an NDA server with like Bastion hosts. So you have like all these technical issues that come up that are, so radically novel and different, and that used to require IT teams, 5 people plus to figure out. And a lot of times it gets figured out by like 2 or 3 people in our industry.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like probably might be a big downside to all of this, is that it really isn't, if you want to get it up to like a really high standard where you can truly work remotely to the standard of like Disney and that kind of IP, it's more work than has been done so far. I think there's more involved.
I think we should get one of these IT people and interview them.
Yeah, if we can get anybody. Actually, we tried. I remember we actually talked to some people, and it never works out. The schedules never work out.
Oh yeah, the schedule didn't work out with that person. Try again.
But yeah, it's like that's a whole, you can have a whole episode just about that, just like all the stuff that the engineers had to deal with.
Yeah.
And, to get everything to work. I personally have very little problems streaming desktops or working remotely or working from a cloud environment, but I know that other people have a lot of issues. That's almost what I'm more curious about, is like the people who actually have a lot of problems. When you're streaming just a desktop from somewhere else, because I'm wondering what their situation is, like what is going on with their cables outside.
Yeah, there's also a thing I noticed is that different people have different reaction to latency. Like I'm okay with a little bit of latency. I used to have this like compact Presario laptop in the 90s, 2000, and it was like this slow, like you would click and then just like, play tic-tac-toe and or a snake on your Nokia, and then like something happened.
Yeah, if you grew up with shitty hardware,
right,
then latency is whatever.
Yeah, but like I set up my husband with like two monitors, and the machine that they gave him at work, the laptop can only output to one monitor. So, like you can connect the Windows machines together so that one Windows machine acts as a monitor.
Mhm.
So I did that to him with his own laptop, but he couldn't stand the latency, which is like extremely low because everything is working on our internal network. Like the computers are like one next to each other. Like there is basically, for me, there is no latency.
Mhm.
But for him, just seeing the mouse like dragging a little bit was like a big annoyance.
It's probably
And
not even like visual. It's probably like it feels like it's dragging. Um,
yeah, it's the feeling, I guess. Yeah, it's not like like it's a you move. It's a whole like visual, like tactical, like
yeah,
feeling you get.
yeah. I had a whole that's such a rabbit hole talking about how people um the difference between truly perceiving images individually versus when you just feel
Yeah,
images when it's like a tactile thing. That's why like when somebody has 120 hertz gaming monitor, it actually makes a difference, not because of necessarily you processing more imagery, but because when you move your mouse, you can actually feel a difference.
right. It's the
Because
same. The
tactile
same.
feeling versus visual is a different thing. Tactile perception versus visual perception.
Yeah.
It's like
So
it's a
it's
little bit
just
like a
like
synesthesia kind of thing. It's like your brain is kind of doing both at the
yeah,
same
it kind of
time.
is.
The
I think it's the same thing of why when Apple like released their iPad with the stylus finally, they
Mhm,
also like increased the refresh rate of the iPads to 120,
mhm,
and it does feel a lot, like you put down the pen and you see immediately like virtual ink. Like it
mhm.
has that feeling like it's like really like you're doing something
Yeah.
immediately. Um, that it's really hard to get on tablets or computers that are not high refresh rate. Like
Yeah.
they might actually perform the same way, but
Yeah.
the feeling that you get is like
Exactly. Yeah. Like the hardware is basically the same.
right.
It's not really processing more. It's just it feels like it's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's like that. Those are all kinds of. I feel like that's all. These are all things that are gonna have to come up in the future, where like you're gonna have to kind of come up with streaming solutions that can handle like 120 hertz environment, because that is kind of a
Right.
thing, because
That's
that is another thing. It's like we talk about like streaming, um full res 4K stuff across, across internet, but that's not the whole picture. A lot of it is really just being able to do certain refresh rates and to get that real feeling of like as if you were local.
yeah. Our machine are set up to 30 frames per second. I set them up that way.
Mhm,
I don't I don't think there will be a way to do it at like higher than 60, to be honest, with what we have right now on Google Clouds.
mhm.
Just too much data,
Yeah.
to stream. I mean, even like TVs right now that they're switching to like the new HDMI ports, they're having trouble with like 120 still because it's a lot
Mhm.
of data in
Yeah.
4K.
Yeah, for sure. So that's all. Yeah, that's all kinds of stuff. That's another thing where like I kind of, when I think of like hybrid environments now, I'm kind of thinking like it's really not it like it's not necessarily an issue of people working remotely. That's kind of whatever. It's more of an issue of like, what if you have a problem like that really needs real-time collaboration,
Yeah,
right? Like if you're like painting something or you're coming up with concept art and things like that, like stuff like that in like a hybrid environment, that's something that might need to really be in an office, where if you're coming up with like visual development, previs, concept art kind of work, if I mean maybe even editorial, even though I've seen editorial done remotely before COVID as well.
yeah.
you know, because the director will be somewhere in LA, but then like the editor's in London or something, and
Mhm.
thing has to get done, you know. So there's an argument that there's definitely like there's always going to be like some like 20% of work that is not going to be completely fulfilled by remote work. I think that's always going to exist. So in that sense, a
Yeah,
hybrid environment.
I do like, I mean, you know, like as you said, like working from home, but it's really like decentralized, as you said, like, and I like that idea much more because we are kind of like stuck around New York, but right now we could actually move. At least I can move out of New York, you know, like you already did.
Mm.
Um, or but like, you know, you can still be around the area of New York City, but have decentralized little offices with like 2 or 3 people, you know, that are working, that are still like working together, but they're separate from the whole like enterprise or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
you know. I think
Yeah.
that actually helps not only the um I mean, and not only helps like those people, but also it kind of shifts economically like um the money around a little bit better. Because right now, like monies are very concentrated on these big cities,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of parts on different countries that are, you know, don't have
Mhm.
that kind of economic growth, but they should. You know, because like before, like offices and the industrial revolution, like, you know, everywhere was kind of very similar.
Yeah.
And then like all these big cities started, and then like everything started getting concentrated there. I think we should kind of like move things away from it because it's a logistical like big issue having to move all these people inside a tiny space. And also like we're basically killing like small towns or like
Yeah.
other areas that, you know, have resources but just are not 2 meters away from the office.
Well, I remember like whatever 3 or 4 years ago when we started doing stuff and we could decided that we are going to try to do things in the cloud. That was kind of like a big argument for it, where it was kind of like living in New York City just was getting harder and harder every year. It was getting
Yeah.
more expensive every year for everybody. You know, if you were a studio, it was more expensive. If you were an artist, it was more expensive. The subways were getting more and more crowded. They were getting more and more decrepit,
Mhm.
right? Where like it wasn't, you know, whether the subway was crowded was one issue, but whether the train was even going to show up was an issue. I
Yeah.
remember when right before I moved out, like the L train was just shut down, which means that people coming in and out of Brooklyn couldn't, basically, right? Or they, you know, it added like a half an
Uh,
hour to
yeah,
their,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it added like a half an hour to their situation. And there's no reason to think like that any of that is gonna get better. There's no reason
Uh,
to think it's
I
going
don't
to
see any.
progressively get worse. And eventually you have to figure out, okay, well, how are you going to do, right? People are going to want more and more work, and they're going to want to try to make more and more money. How are you going to do that in a smaller and smaller space? You're not. It's not going to work.
Especially
Eventually,
when prices of everything go up and up and up, like
yeah,
to like ridiculous amounts. Like
yeah,
right now, it's pretty ridiculous to be honest in New
yeah.
York
It's
City.
already there. It's already there. And I think it was just kind of this realization where, like, you know, we're seeing all these people naturally try to do work remotely because, like what I said, like I worked with a director who was doing editorial out of LA,
Yeah.
and the editorial was in New York, you know, and it's because they were working on another project.
Hmm.
Because you know, same thing, if you're, even when you're like a hotshot director, you're still part of like that train where like they want to do more and more and they want to make more and more money, and it's just the pressure keeps going up and up. So you're not going to be able to just like chill out and like stay in New York casually for a whole year until and see a project through. Once you're done with your part of the job, you know, you're going to go back to LA and start, you know, brainstorming the next project while trying to finish off editorial that's still in New York.
Yeah.
these are all issues that are not necessarily just like, oh, like I want to stay at home and play with my dog. No, these are issues, these are true economical issues that have to do with just the nature of commerce and the fact that we're running out of space and there's too many people. There's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
people.
we're running out of space in the cities. There's only so many people that you can cramp in a tiny area.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you can always cramp more people. There are cities in the world like that, but
Well, and who wants that,
right. But I'm sure they also don't want to be in those
Yeah, they
cities.
don't want
Like,
that either. Nobody wants that. It's no one's goal.
yeah,
No one's goal is that. It's an unfortunate thing that happens. It's more of a tragedy, I guess, than it is anyone's hope or dream to be in that kind of a situation.
yeah.
Like what we're doing is, like our kind of strategy is for like the hybrid environment, which I mean, I don't think it's proprietary. We can talk about it. It's
Do you share
basically
the
the
cat?
idea that you if you have a private cloud, right, you have kind of like you have a private cloud, you have kind of like the benefits of owning your hardware and the security benefits of owning your hardware, plus the capacity of doing cloud infrastructure,
Mhm.
which you can have a whole episode about all the stuff you can do in the cloud. But now you're also adding to it the fact that you can have like a small space somewhere with fiber running to it that is just holding your server with like like a security camera and like a key lock door, like the card lock doors, and you can have an artist in New York. And
Mhm.
because you have massive fiber relays in Manhattan that also go into New Jersey or Connecticut or Long Island, you have virtually very little latency. You're paying almost nothing for the space. You have hardware that you own and you can secure very aggressively. And you have this massive flexibility that comes with doing cloud computing, all while using artists that are in New York that still fulfill tax incentives if you have those, or just the fact that you can work with artists where they are,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
not like, yeah.
I mean, just even in New York, as an art, I mean, I lived in Brooklyn for a long time, and just commuting to the city was like an hour, and I don't know how people that had like 2 hours commute how they did it, because like that's 2 hours that you're not doing any, like, you know in your
It
life
sucked,
you,
that's how I did it. It
but
sucked.
like it sucks, yeah, but also like, is it, I don't know, I personally never saw it like it was worth it to do more than an hour commute. But like I think it would be much, like, even if you're just living in New York but you're like in Brooklyn, an hour away from Manhattan, just already gaining 2 extra hours that you can
Mhm.
use during your
Oh, that's
day.
huge.
Yeah,
Tell it to people with families, people who have
right.
kids. Those 2 hours are like everything. I think that's another thing. I think a lot of people, now that we're kind of getting to the point where COVID is becoming more managed, I think, kind of
Mhm.
the and this question is coming up. It's like, oh, like how much are people going to go back to offices? It's like there's a lot of people with kids that are going to put up a fight,
Yeah.
because they now spend a year with their kids, basically, at home, spending a lot of time with them, and it's not going to be that easy for them to give that up. And it shouldn't be, like that's not,
Yeah.
work is only worth so much, right? And we're kind of seeing that. I mean, this is more of like a political thing, but like there's a lot of people who are quitting their jobs because they didn't see
Yeah,
the
I
value
think
of
that
it.
that is one of the biggest problem that like other industries are having right now. Like these people that are like, well, it's not worth for me as a human being go back to that job
Mhm.
because of probably one of this
Yeah,
reason.
there's a lot of factors. Some people also just
There's a lot.
realize that sometimes it's better to be poor than to work some jobs, and that's really true.
And I completely agree because I've seen, I mean, even just working at a restaurant, and I did that. It's a lot of work, man. And and nobody likes you when you work there. It's kind of like being on set. Everybody hates you because you're the visual effect person on set, but you're there to actually like make their shit better and
Yeah.
make them happy.
Yeah.
But like
People
they all
only
hate,
slightly like you more offset.
right?
Yeah, no, it's true. There's a lot of things like that, like going on where these issues, it's like we're talking about going back into offices in the context of COVID, but it's because
Mhm.
everyone forgot that there was a lot of stuff happening way before COVID that is problematic with
Yeah,
offices in major cities. Um, there's also kind of like different issues of like urban sprawl and things like that, where like it's not even as simple as like, oh, well, Amazon can just build an office in the middle of the desert. Well, it's no, not really, because if
yeah,
you build an office in the middle of the desert, now you have to build and maintain roads and all this other stuff. And it all hinges on this one industry or one company that's in these places. That's not healthy either.
yeah.
Um,
On
but
top of like, not a lot of people want to live in the desert.
well, that exists for some reason. I mean, that's subjective. I don't know why people live in that stuff. I've seen it. There's
I've seen it.
communities.
There's people that like it, but others don't.
Yeah, I don't understand it myself. Some people went like some vendors went permanently remote, like as in like there's not even an office, they're just completely remote. I think that's viable. Yeah, I think that's completely viable. You can probably have Zoom sessions or Cinesyncs or things like that with like people that you need to work with in real time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that all works. And I mean, it's been working. It's kind of people have been doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected the the cookie to crumble basically, because like when you look at like when you have like an overview of society, like things are going crazy and crazier, because like where more and more people like there must be a point where something like doesn't work anymore. My roommate used to be bartender and like she had even crazier hours than I did. Well, I didn't really have crazy hours, but compared to like somebody that just goes like 9 to 5 at an office, they were crazy.
mhm. Yeah.
um and I imagine like a lot of people like her, after being forced to stay at home and revisit their life choices, like I'll be like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I like working in a bar less than minimum wage and like staying there like until like 4 in the morning because I have to clean, like, and then the boss is not the best,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Like, I mean, she left, she went to Mexico now, so she lives there. She went there on vacation, got stuck because of COVID, and now she lives there. That's
Yeah,
how,
she was just like peace. Like I'm
yeah,
out.
that's what she did. So
I know a
like,
few people
like
like that. Yeah,
she's
that's
one
great.
of those that like will not go back to work. So like that place is gonna look for a bartender forever. If they, I heard that
Yeah.
the guy also left with all the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and
Everyone's just like I'm out.
yeah,
The um going back to that whole thing, because I don't know why, like, but in terms of hours, I remember like when I commuted from Long Island to the city and I was working in a studio, like I would commute, like I think it was like an hour and a half each way. So I would commute 3 hours every day. Right.
mhm,
And when I would basically what it would do is it forced me to be like a night owl, right? Like I would, because there's a point to this. Like I would, I'd wake up super early, go to work, do the job, and then I'd get home at like 10, 11 p.m. and then I would try to do everything else up until like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. All right.
mhm,
So I was effectively living on like 6 hours of sleep, which is not necessarily enough for me. And I just did that for like years. And it just operated that way, where
yeah,
basically my whole life had to happen at night.
yeah,
Ever since I started working from home, I go to bed at like 11 because everything kind of normalized. Like I kind of live my life kind of like the way like a person should. and I go to sleep at kind of normal hours, relatively. I mean, and I sleep like a normal amount, you know.
Yeah.
And my point is that that's also really hard to give up, because even if you start going back into the office, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to re-enter that cycle, and they're also going to realize that, like, is this really worth it?
Yeah.
You know, like, whatever money I get paid, like, is it really worth doing this for all the things that I have to give up now? Because it's small things. It's small things that you wouldn't think matter, but they really do matter.
Yeah. No, no, totally. I mean, I wouldn't. I feel like I'm way more, at least twice as productive as when I was going to the office, but even more. You know, like I'm productive work-wise because I'm doing two jobs instead of one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like in downtime of one, I ramp up the other and vice versa. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but then also like I am more productive. Like I do my laundry, you know,
Yeah.
more than like once every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I my fridge is always full because I might just
Yeah.
run to the supermarket like, you know, 5 minutes when I take a break and then come back. Um, like I feel like more productive in the rest of my life, not just work. So I also feel like a little bit more fulfilled. That it's not just like I'm
Yeah.
working and that's it. Like I have no life.
Yeah. The fridge thing is huge, because I was thinking
Fridge thing
about
is
that,
huge.
like,
My fridge has never been so full. But
well, because it's not just that. It's like, because what happens is that, like, when you never have a chance to actually go and buy groceries, you wind up just ordering stuff.
yeah,
You wind up just eating shit, because it's
yeah,
easy, it's fast, because you're exhausted at night and you don't want to go in like a grocery store or whatever. And yeah, so it kind of, like, just the fact that you can go and buy groceries and eat real food, it's going to make a massive difference in anyone's life. I
yeah.
remember I had a friend who worked the night shift at like a 24/7 grocery store. And there's this is why some people probably know about this. Like, around like 3 to 5 a.m. is actually one of the busiest times for some grocery stores, the 21st, like Walmart and
Yeah.
ShopRite and those places, because there's an entire category of people that either work night shift or they get off really late, or whatever, and they do their groceries like either before they go to work or right
Right
after.
after.
Yeah. And it's because the funny thing is, because it's like, the reason I bring this up is because my friend would talk to these people a lot, and they would say that, like, well, like, nothing's open.
Yeah.
You can't
So I
buy
have to
food
like,
anywhere, like, unless you go to like 7-Eleven or something. But if you're feeding yourself off of 7-Eleven, I mean, that's just a rough
I don't think you can do
situation.
that more than twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's at least for me that was a big change, and I feel like probably for a lot of people our age or maybe even younger, because like
Mhm.
I see people older than me, like they had no trouble like buying stuff at the supermarket and cooking, but for me and like it's always been like a big deal, like you know. But now that I can do it at home, also like I don't need to make like anything super big.
Mhm.
Um, I can do it quickly. I just, you know, the fridge is full, so I have to finish it. Like there's a lot of things are like making more sense than
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. The one thing that I was talking to some friends, there is still some pessimism around, like, working from home actually sticking around, because they're starting to, like, on the production side, people are starting to come back into offices, and they're
Mm,
really not trying to do remote. There's still security concerns. Like, there's people that are concerned about NDA servers and um, things like that. Like I've heard comments where, like, if one person leaks something that's working from home, then like Disney overnight is just gonna cancel all the stuff. I mean, I do think that a lot of that is just pessimism. I mean, stuff gets leaked actually all the time, and a
yeah, I
lot of
mean that
times,
happened even before, right?
yeah, it happened recently on somebody leaked an edit of something.
Well, I remember Jesus, what was that movie?
Oh, Wolverine.
Wolverine, yeah. That
Mhm.
got leaked the whole edit with no visual effects. Like, I mean,
or
that
10
movie,
10 VFX. Yeah.
right? That movie was as big as it gets. So I'm pretty sure it was pretty. I mean,
Yeah.
not as big as it gets, but it was one of
It was a
one of
big
those
movie.
that you expect to make a lot of money out. So you probably like want to keep under lock and chain.
Mhm.
It still leaked, and at the time there
Mhm.
was no working from home.
Right, right. No, exactly. Like, yes, this was Sony ImageWorks, and like they had plenty of security. They do not lack that, and it still got out,
Yeah,
which is kind of the lesson. Like it is kind of like if you're really, like we talk about this a lot, like if you're really concerned about security, because security, you can, it's a big topic, like, right? Like you're never going to be 100% secure. If you have nation states trying to hack you, it really doesn't matter what you do.
yeah, I would
Because
be
they
more
will have
concerned.
spies trying to infiltrate your facility. Like if you're dealing with that kind of stuff, security is not your concern. Your concern is like public image and your employees. It's whether or not your employees are actually legit enough to not try to retaliate against you.
Mhm.
And that's really an issue of the modern world. It's not an issue of like working from home or like security infrastructures or whatever. Like you can buy a book and figure out how to do really hardcore enterprise security.
Mhm.
Any IT, like my brother works in IT, IT sec, and like you can get certified in that stuff relatively easily. Whether or not you will spend the money to implement it, and whether or not you have enough active security to actually be safe is a different question. Edward Snowden is a perfect example. I mean, the guy worked for the government, all the security clearance you could ever need or have, but he just didn't like the situation, so he retaliated, and that can happen
Uh,
to anybody. Like it's really not. And then
yeah,
whether or not
to be honest, I'll be more concerned about like third-party hackers, that are like either trying to do it to like get some money or just for like fun. Then
yeah,
that's somebody that works under like for the company or whatever. Like, I would think.
yeah.
Um,
Well, third-party hackers are. That's kind of what everyone. I actually am kind of less concerned about third-party hackers because the entire IT sec industry is really built around preventing that. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like, yeah, like if you have really low security and you kind of just don't care at all, yeah, like any hacker is going to have kind of an easy time to get in.
well, yeah, I'm saying like I'm more concerned in the sense like in terms of security, I would be more concerned about that
Oh yeah, like if
than
you were, yeah.
than my workers, leaking footage on
Mhm.
purpose.
Right, right. Yeah, because
Um,
that's kind of, if you don't trust your workers, well, that's a completely different issue.
right.
That's not an issue of your IT security or your cloud infrastructure. That's just,
Yeah.
your workers don't trust you or you don't trust them. That's a really complicated situation that you should probably
Yeah,
figure out.
that would be.
But if North Korea is trying to hack you, then it's like, well, bro, like, I don't know. You need to hire like 20 people to literally scour all your network logs in real time all the time.
Yeah.
You should probably vet some of your people. Maybe they have spies in your facility.
Well, I hope, thankfully, for the movie industry or the entertainment industry, nobody's gonna, no North Korea is gonna try to hack it because there's really, I feel like nothing that is like super important. Like,
Isn't that who went after? Isn't that who did the hack on Sony ImageWorks?
that's what they say because of the movie of the Joe Rogan movie, not the Joe Rogan, the yeah, was it like the
The
dictator?
North Korean state-sponsored hackers are suspect. This is Wikipedia.
Right, they're
Um,
suspected, but there is no, there
yeah,
wasn't. I don't think there was like any
they don't
confirmation.
know. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. There's
But I would think like if I'm a state and I want to hack something, I would probably not like what's there with the movie. Like what can you do with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, that's just more like, it's also the kind of thing where like, if nor like,
Like
those
ruining
are
a
acts of
movie company
war.
is not gonna like make you better in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of the world, politics.
Well, it's almost like, when you hack any kind of like domestic enterprise like that, that's an act of war.
Yeah,
So you're basically just like priming the United States to come after you, which, why would you do that over a movie? It
yeah,
really
exactly.
doesn't make
Like
sense.
you
You
better do
can't
it
be
for
that
something that
petty.
is
Although
worth
it's
it.
North Korea,
That's true. But you
what can
better
you
still
do?
do it for something that is worth it, like that you can
Yeah,
like use it against it or something. Like,
yeah,
at least that's what I think, but I'm not a politician, so who knows?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
like
What do we know?
recently some politicians I think they have less brain than my cat. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Especially when it comes to hacking or the internet
Yeah.
or technology just in general.
I mean,
Just
I definitely saw my cat. He's much better at hacking. Like when he walks over the keyboard, like it looks like a
Mhm.
professional from a
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. It's like the
Like,
Matrix. Like they're
it's
hacking
like,
through everything.
I
They
don't know
can
what you
like
did,
really
but
destroy my nuke scripts like without problem.
yeah, exactly.
Speaking of,
I hope you can hear him crying because he's like he wants food. But
that's fine. I think I have one of my creatures is doing something too.
yeah, I'm gonna give you food. Don't worry, I'm not gonna
So,
start.
so what do we think the consensus is? I mean, like there's upsides and downsides. I think some of the downsides are mostly technological, but my thinking is that it's like an 80-20 thing where either 80% is going to go back into office or 80% is going to stay home, and then the 20% is going to do the other side. But there's parts of it that's going to stay. I think it's Pandora's box has been opened, and
Yeah, I mean,
it's just
I
gonna.
think it really depends on the industry, but like when we're talking about like offices where there's like just logistical and no, manufacturing, definitely like 80-20, maybe like 70-30 if you really want to like,
Mhm,
maybe you want to have a team that just, is designing something all together,
mhm.
maybe. But most of the time you don't, you can do like a week like that and then like you don't really need to. So I really think like the hybrid approach of like, some days and some other days not, I think that's a good approach.
Mhm.
Um, because you get the days that you have people in and then like they can all be home and actually do the work,
Yeah,
like sort of like a big meeting, like everybody's on the same page and then like produce, like you don't have to produce at the office, you can produce somewhere else.
yeah. I kind of hope that people do like companies, maybe bigger companies and smaller companies, that they'll, instead of having one big office, have like 3 or 4 smaller ones that are
That's
just
another thing that
dispersed.
I don't think that concept has arrived yet, but I really like that idea. As I said, I think it also helps economically, like in general, everyone.
Yeah,
I think like having all these big companies and big things, it's too hard for humans to like, you know, keep like
keep doing
maintain.
it. Yeah,
It's actually easier if you just have to maintain like little batches of like people together. Like,
yeah. And well, it's economically so much more powerful because
yeah,
you
microeconomics.
can really work out like if you don't need one big centralized office in like a big city,
Mhm.
that's going to cost you like 10 to 30,000 dollars a month in rent, for like a
Yeah.
VFX studio. The Yeah, I mean that's about what it is. You could instead have like 4 or 5 satellite offices in areas that are not super expensive, that are much smaller spaces. And if you're really clever and you put in the work, you can rent really clever spots that really cost very little. So
Mhm.
you can have 4 or 5 smaller offices that are more convenient for all of your workers. Everything will work far more efficiently, um, while paying, like 5 grand a month total. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I don't know if like the costs are gonna go down them a lot, but like even if they don't, it still makes more sense.
Yeah, I think it's possible for them to go down.
It's possible that they will go down, yes.
If you're trying to get an office in Manhattan, like a huge office in Manhattan, your costs are not going to go down.
Right.
They will be high and they will keep going up. But if you have the option of having multiple small offices, you have the option of lowering your costs. It's a possibility now. And like, yeah, I mean, I like things like that. You know, like options like that.